Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything. Geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Porkins Policy Radio. As always, I am your host, Pierce Redmond, and you can find this show here at American Freedom Radio, AmericanFreedomRadio.com, as well as on my website, which is PorkinsPolicyReview.com. If you are new to the show, there are lots of ways to listen. You can subscribe on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Google Play, a whole bunch of other podcatchers. You can check me out later on Friday nights on a host of other networks, including Awake Radio and I think PSN and People's Internet Radio. And also on Saturdays from 6 to 8 Mountain Time on KYAH, which is 540 AM out in Utah. So you can listen there. And, of course, everything is archived here at American Freedom Radio. I guess I have some little announcements and things like that, but maybe we'll save that a bit for the second hour, or the top of the second hour, because I really want to get into today's topics, which will probably be varied, and we'll cover a lot of ground. And I'm very happy to be joined by a good friend of the show and a good friend of mine, Chuck Ochelli, of course, the man behind the Ochelli Effect, where you can find all of his work at Ochelli.com. And I mean, I think all of the listeners, but faithful listeners will know that Chuck and I am a guest on Chuck's show, usually on Tuesdays. This is my Tuesday off, so it's fun to kind of flip the script and have Chuck on my show. So sort of like a reverse Ochelli effect. Chuck, how are you? I'm glad that you're here talking to me.
You know what? So am I, and of course, we're here to talk a little bit about culture creation. In case anybody doesn't know, that's my voice at the beginning of the show there, and I was really happy to do that. And I'm actually looking forward to re-recording this pretty soon.
Yeah.
Apparently, there's going to be some new music coming up. Did you tell your listeners that yet?
No. Well, actually, I think I might have mentioned it. I think I mentioned it, I don't know, maybe like a month ago. But we're going to have some new music. I've got to kind of get on Robbie Martin's case on that, because he's been working on it, and I think he must be near completion. But there's some new music, just so that we don't have to deal with any kind of copyright issues in the future. I do love this song. I mean, it was like a Sophie's Choice sort of a moment. Debating if I was going to get a new song or what, but Robbie has been working on some really interesting music that is very similar to the Cyber People song that plays at the beginning, which is called Polaris. And we'll definitely, a must was to have Chuck's vocals over whatever the new theme song is. So we'll probably re-record. I don't know. We might switch around the lyrics, although I do kind of love what we have. Maybe we'll just add to it a bit more, because the show has, I guess, changed a bit since we first recorded that stuff. But Chuck, let everybody know too where they can go to support your work, because you've got a Patreon, you've got a donate button up on OchelliEffect.com, or excuse me, on Ochelli.com. So just let the listeners know where they can go to support your work. Because you record Monday to Friday, plus, you do the After Effect, of which I have been, I've been on the After Effect. So you record for sometimes like 3 hours every day, Monday to Friday. So tell the listeners out there where they can go to support your work.
Well, yeah, I do that Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, and I do it live, but there are recorded pieces that are added on later, and also we've been leaving the After Effect open on the live stream. The After Effect is just after the show, maybe like we recap a couple things. I like doing that. That's for the members and for the people at Patreon, which, I got a thing over there, obviously. We're all looking to live, and for as little as $1, you can go over there and be a part of the effect. See, that's how that works. See, I'm just Ochelli. You're the effect. There you go. My hook line.
And I'm a proud subscriber of Chuck on Patreon, so I encourage all of my listeners to go and, like you said, it's $1. Surely if you support me for $1, you can definitely support Chuck as well, who in turn, helps support me because, I get to, do this great show with you every Tuesday. And usually, Chuck, we talk a lot about geopolitics and what's going on in the news on Tuesdays. Yes, unfortunately. And today is a momentous day. It is, it's being described as historic, monumental, life-changing. And of course, we are referring to the Singapore summit that just ended between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un, the leader of the DPRK, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or North Korea, as it's colloquially known. And Chuck, I don't really know where to begin with this. I mean, because we've talked numerous times on your show about the summit. We talked about when the summit was basically kind of called off and what was going to happen. And I think there's a lot of noise on all sides of the issue of the political spectrum about what just happened in Singapore. Now, this summit was, I believe it was actually supposed to last like 2 days, and now it's only really lasted a day. As far as I can tell, they only spoke for like an hour alone, and then I think a few hours afterwards with advisors and translators and whatnot. But really only I think we're really looking at like 6 hours of communication between the North Korean government and the American government. South Korea, of course, was not included in any of this, and we will get to some of the surprises that I believe a lot of South Koreans woke up to in terms of what was being negotiated between Trump and Kim Jong-un. But what's your sort of initial take? Because we were chatting before we came on, but when we were off air, I said I kept kind of going back and forth because this is a good step in the sense that we're talking. I am always err on the side of talking to adversaries or political rivals rather than bombing them or subverting their government through the clandestine forces and things like that. So obviously talking is good. There are some nice proposals or things that have been sort of brought to the table. I mean, Trump has said that the Pentagon is not going to be going through with their annual war games in South Korea. That's certainly a positive gesture. Trump described it as, he said that was a provocative move on his, on behalf of him to do this. That is true. I mean, that's usually how it is described, to the rest of the world. It is a very provocative action, these war games, which are basically simulating America and South Korea bombing and destroying North Korea. So, on that level, okay, that's great. But on the flip side, I've seen there's so much negativity towards this from both the right and the left, saying that, Trump is selling out or that this is bad, that, the sort of peace advocates, the people like someone I mentioned on your show, Tim Sharrock, who's a great journalist. There seems to be this sort of like contrarian view to support all of what is being put out there. And I don't know if that's quite the best course of action. So, Chuck, what's your take on this?
Well, look, I got to hold my tongue just a bit here, okay? Because the reality is that let's figure out who the dog is and who the pony is, because we just got a show. All right. The reality of the situation, without any sort of hyperbole, is quite simple. There is a greater legitimacy which has been lent to the North Korean regime and to Kim Jong-un personally. You have a regime where there is a cult of personality that is at the head of the government. Of course, the true head of the government is a dead man, which would be his grandfather. Let's keep that in mind. The reality here, though, is that just by meeting with the American president, allowing North Korea's top spy to come to the White House and deliver the oversized envelope, taking this man as seriously as he has already granted him a great deal of, well, let's just call it ammunition when it comes to the propaganda wars, right? So, North Korea is now not just a threat, but a player in a lot of situations where they would not have been before. So, Trump has given a lot away, and the administration has given a lot away to the North Korean regime. Now, this is a very objective sort of point of view. I mean, I am no fan of this guy. I am no fan of the North Korean regime. I'm not a defender of either. And I've got to tell you that effectively what has happened is the great deal maker has been outmaneuvered by a younger and seemingly smarter individual who has played his cards very well on the geopolitical stage. Now, that having been said, and I'm not somebody who supports all of the declarations of the United Nations, but when you see that a country has been described as, committing crimes against humanity on various levels, violating human rights on multiple occasions, including imprisoning, exterminating, forced rape in captivity, all these sorts of things, which have been listed and publicly understood by this regime. It's kind of fascinating to watch an undereducated or uneducated American representative sit there and talk about how smart and really talented somebody is. And I found that phrase interesting, even in and of itself. Talented, the talent to do what? To imprison your own people, to starve them, to continuously go out on the world stage and be an agitator and make threats against the United States. I mean, a couple of months ago we were hearing, you'll see fire and fury like the world has never seen before. They better not threaten us again, and my button is bigger. And all this nonsense culminates in, hey, let's bring Dennis Rodman along because he might be able to interpret crazy for me, and we'll sit here and put the American flag next to the North Korean flag, give them some more legitimacy, point out that they are, very wonderful people who love their leader. I don't think people should let that phrase go. Now, I'm not saying that all of the propaganda related to the North Korean regime that has been distributed throughout the world is absolutely true, but if half of it is, would any other representative get away with this without being called a lot of names, without being threatened with impeachment, without being demonized by the press on all sides? I wonder. But there's a special place in hell, you see, for people that would possibly even seek to undermine this particular auspicious occasion, which, on the face of it, yeah, it's very nice to talk. But here's the scenario, Pierce. If you and I were going to go into business together, and we got together for a meeting, and we sat and discussed what type of music we like to listen to and what type of women we like, that's not really accomplishing very much when it comes to the goal we had in mind about going into business together, unless our business has to do with running, a strip club. So, what has happened here, effectively, that we know of, because, again, there's nothing being presented. There is no a cooperative statement which has gone out. There is no real assurances that have been granted, regardless of whether somebody would hold them or not, because that's the justification. Well, just because I have an assurance doesn't mean it'll happen. Well, no kidding. You should know that better than anybody else, Mr. Trump. But, because this is a guy who stiffs people that he owes money to and things like that. But anyway, let's pay no attention to his actual history. The reality is that very little was accomplished. You got a dog and pony show. You got a temporary reprieve from the discussion of, which one of Trump's people is now trying to intimidate a witness. You got, a bit of a reprieve from the overplayed hand of the left regarding the Russian situation, which is very real, but they have latched onto it and dog whistled it so bad that now it's gotten to a point of nausea where nobody wants to even begin to acknowledge that it's a real thing. So, what do we have at the end of the day? Very little outside of a PR win for those that are foolish enough to believe that Trump accomplished something simply by sitting down and his greatness just did all the work. And on the other hand, a whole lot of propaganda victories for a regime which has been, here to this point, marginalized on the world stage, demonized, and probably on some portions of it rightfully so, and on others not so rightfully so. But it's all irrelevant, because what did it actually accomplish? Well, he's agreed to denuclearize. First of all, denuclearize. Can we not come up with a less cumbersome way to explain that? Anyway, why bother? Because we're busy picking fights with Canada. Okay, sorry again. The thing is that this is good to talk, sure, but only if you have people that can actually execute something, that can accomplish something, only if you have people that understand what they're talking about and who they're talking to, and maybe individuals who are a little more strategically sound about the amount of diplomatic victories that they wish to grant to someone. I mean, he's heaping praise on this individual, talking about how he's really taken on a tough job, being somebody who inherited the throne from his father, coming in there at a young age, assassinating his family and executing all those other people that happen to disagree with him as well, and disappearing people left and right. That guy has done a good job and run his country very tough. Oh, and by the way, let's invite Russia back to the G7 and make it the G8 again. Putin's ready. I know he is, because I talk to him every day just after I speak to Sean Hannity. Okay. Where do we actually get left with this? I got to tell you, Pierce, there's really much ado about nothing on all sides here. Anybody who says that, a lot of damage was done, not really. Realistically, we're still in the same situation. Now, it is kind of fascinating that the exercises have been paused with South Korea. At any time that can begin again. But all of this, I think people have forgotten, has its roots in North and South Korea sitting down together without the United States, without an intermediary, because they have no idea what the United States is willing to do, because we have a guy who just makes statements regardless of what the reality is. So maybe it was time for them to sit down and try and straighten out their family squabble. Okay? Wonder if that had anything to do with it. Meanwhile, Trump is just attempting to attach his brand to accomplishing something. Once again, the denuclearization, again, hate that term, the denuclearization has been attempted before. We've seen much more aggressive negotiation and reasonable discourse take place, and yet we saw the most launches of missiles and tests and things like this in the past, year and a half, than we've ever seen from the North Korean regime since it existed. Oh, by the way, from that Korean conflict, which we didn't actually officially end back in the 1950s, huh? Okay, so where does it leave us? I would say that it's pretty much still an as yet undetermined story, and people that are making grand declarations one way or the other don't understand what's happening. And the funny thing is that the guy who is a dictator who can have the rules in his country changed to comport to his agreements. I mean, I love that Twitter account that sort of is a parody of the.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Yeah, the Democratic People's
they have
Republic.
The language down so well.
It's so wonderful. It's hysterical. It's like exactly what you get from English translations whenever there's a propaganda release from North Korea, but on a Twitter account where they just make crazy statements. I love them. Got to tell you, it's kind of a dangerous situation, and you wonder how seriously the rest of the world is taking the United States at this point, especially given our need to pick a fight with Canada of all places, and then the praise for a dictator. Once again, just like Erdogan, just like owe anybody else that he thinks he can praise, while he's trying to make sure and give great deal of thought to pardoning Muhammad Ali, who doesn't need a pardon, and all of that happening. You know, you wonder why anybody is taking any of this seriously, except for the fact that with the support of nearly half of the population in this country, we have an idiot at the switch, and who literally doesn't know the history, doesn't know how things work, doesn't really understand the art of the deal unless it's to make no deal, and here we go. I don't know what to say except which one is the dog, which one is the pony, Pierce. That's it. There's my take in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, and you know, there's a bunch in there that I agree with you. Some stuff I might disagree on it. And here's kind of my take, and then we'll sort of take it from there. Is that I think that ultimately this is a positive step. And let me just say this too, that a lot of people are complaining about the language. You know, why didn't it say verifiable denuclearization? And there should have been more language sort of specifying details and stuff. Let me just, to those people, those individuals, let me just say this. This is the first time that the U.S. has spoken directly with North Korea. On this level, in terms of a sitting U.S. president, because obviously, I mean, again, North Korea has this weird celebrity obsession, like when they wanted Bill Clinton to come and negotiate the release of two women who were probably spies. Embedded within, I think it was Current TV at the time, Al Gore's network, who just happened to accidentally wander into North Korea from China.
Well, see, but is that celebrity obsession, or is that a lack of understanding in exactly whose job it is to do that? See, if the supreme leader gets himself involved with everything, who's going to question the supreme leader? Maybe they don't understand that the president in this country, allegedly, is not a supreme leader. Maybe they just don't get that part of the equation, and therefore, well, Bill Clinton can come over here and negotiate stuff with us. I'm just saying.
That's an interesting. No, I think that's an interesting point, Chuck. So this is what I will say. Negotiation on this level, it's going to be slow. I don't think that we should dismiss everything that's happening, because this is like a first step, hopefully, towards something more sustainable. So I think that's one thing I would say to the people that are just hypercritical of any of this. You know, it's like how dare we speak. I mean, and I'm specifically talking about like the Rachel Maddow, MSNBC liberals who are how dare we speak with a dictator and a human rights abuser. I mean, we speak with Saudi Arabia all the time. Virtually all of our allies are abhorrent. Vindictive. I mean, we love Paul Kagame. He is a dictator in Rwanda who is, responsible for millions of deaths. We have no problem with him.
Not to mention hypocrisy in general, because right now, aren't we the same country that are taking illegal immigrant kids and locking them in cages at the moment?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I want to bring it up a little bit later, but there's even more stuff on that. The domestic front right now, in terms of what Sessions is allowing, his immigration policies is, I mean, horrifying. And I want to get to that a little bit later, because I think that's a great counterpoint to what we're seeing over here. But here's my other thing, though. To the people out there that have been working towards peace and have been advocating for peace on the Korean Peninsula, that are now kind of praising Donald Trump, or at least praising the steps that are being taken right now, I think they also need a bit of a reality check, because do we honestly trust that this is really going to go through? This is a man whose opinion can be changed on a dime. If Kim Kardashian asks him to pardon someone, apparently that is enough for Trump to pardon a woman who had spent way too long of a time in prison. But, she was not a person who, got busted for like an 8-ball of coke. She was involved in a large-scale cocaine trafficking conspiracy. So, I mean, keep that in mind. And also, that's wonderful that he's released her, or he's going to grant her this pardon. But at the same time, he doesn't care about, like you said, separating children from their parents, saying that drug dealers like that woman deserve to be, executed. So his opinion can change so fast. Like you said earlier, Chuck, it wasn't that long ago that Trump was bragging and boasting about the size of his nuclear button and how he was going to, it would fire in fury. So
hang on, because there's a little problem here. When you're talking about the drug dealer and changing his mind about that, let's cut right through the BS on it real fast, Piers. The bottom line there, the reason why he selected that particular person is because Kim Kardashian brought her to his attention. Yes, indeed. But why did he execute that particular pardon and then immediately after consider, even though it was not required, pardoning Muhammad Ali? Why did he do that? Well, I have suspicions if it wasn't just so that he could pander to black America and say, look, I'm not a racist, I'm pardoning black people. I mean,
sure.
let's be honest here. That's what that's about, and that gave him an opportunity. So he had the star power there, which he could feed off of. Kim Kardashian, did that woman need to sit in prison as long as she did? No. Do drug offenders who are sitting in prison need to sit there as long as they do? Absolutely not. And when it comes to cannabis, it's not a drug, so I don't want to hear it. Anyway, the thing is, very factually that he even made a statement after that. Hey, those people kneeling, at the football games, why don't they tell me who to pardon? Let me ask some black people who to pardon, because I need to make sure that I show you I'm not exactly a racist, even though, anyway, come on. That's what that's about. That's not about a changing opinion. That's his version of strategy. Okay?
Oh, and I think you're correct, Chuck, and I can see his strategy changing vis-a-vis North Korea. If Kim Kardashian came to him and was like, this would be really or somebody, I mean, let's not forget who's going to be running a lot of these negotiations. John Bolton. He's not going to give an inch. He's already publicly tried to sabotage these negotiations at least once that we know of, if not twice. So that's the other thing is I think the people that are so enamored with the rhetoric that we're seeing right now. Now, yes, for instance, the halting of war games is a big step. But if you listen to what Trump actually said with those war games, he had this whole little section where he was like, and it's very provocative, and I don't think it's a good idea. It costs us a lot of money, and the South Koreans aren't paying enough. And then he follows that up with, that's something that we need to address later. Now, why would we need to address that later if we're not going to be doing war games? Is this about getting more money from the South Korea? If the South Koreans were paying for the bulk of these war games, then Trump would be fine with them? So,
everything is a shakedown for the Trump brand, don't you know? Because after all, hey, look, let's talk privately about, hey, imagine, because I got a movie trailer to show you, imagine that there is, some condos we can build on the shores there over in North Korea. Come on. You don't want Trump Tower, Pyongyang to be built. I will put in a casino. I'll stiff the dealers and everything. It'll be no big deal. And hey, here's a big plus: no black people over there, so I'm all good. It's all a fabulous thing, right? This guy, come on. I mean, realistically, what did we get out of this? Nothing. What did we get out of it besides, something to talk about at this point in time where we can speculate about where something can go? Okay. Realistically, did you think that certain things would lead to, diplomatic disasters that turn into real live fire events in the past? Not necessarily. This guy has no idea, and neither do his advisors at this point. Outside of, you got to be honest, when you're looking at the most sane guy who's nicknamed Mad Dog over there being part of the administration, when it comes to posturing and rhetoric regarding things like warfare, because this is psychological warfare, what's going on here. When Mad Dog Mattis is the sanest guy in the administration, what does that tell you? Okay? These guys have no clue about the peripheral things that are going to occur, the collateral events that will now arise from the ripples that are created. Okay, very much like this whole thing with, oh, well, gee, I'm going to pull out of the nuclear deal. I bet that not a single one of his people thought that that was going to lead to the gas prices we see right now. I bet that not a single one of his people thought that some of these other interesting things he's doing at the moment, being tough, right, are going to lead to a lot of suffering across the country. But hey, pay no attention to that because so much winning. I don't know where. I don't know where. Where's the deal that's being made? Where is something that's being signed? Where is an agreement even in hand? To see if anybody even follows through on the agreement is yet another story, because that's for later. Where is the understanding of how this works? Well, South Korea needs to pay us more money. We're not over there to get paid, fool. That's not what we're there for. Do you not know the history? I guarantee you he doesn't. Okay?
Oh, no. Well, they not once really anywhere in this was South Korea even brought up. Again, I mean, I would be careful and weary if I was Moon Jae-in or anyone within his government, and certainly from the right wing within South Korea, which is not like the majority. It overall. The majority of people in South Korea politically and culture are more in favor of this sort of peace stuff. But the right in South Korea will seize on the cessation of these war games as totally proof that this is the first step towards the North coming in. And the right in South Korea is extremely vocal and loud, and they get a lot of PR and play anytime they kind of pipe in. And not telling the South Koreans that this was happening, even if it is something that Moon Jae-in and others would be in favor of, I think that was a silly move. And I think it also illustrates the fact that for Donald Trump, this is not about what is good for South Korea. This is what's good for him. I guess by, ostensibly what's good for America. This should really be about the North and the South coming to a real agreement between themselves. I would hope. And I hope that is something that can happen. I mean, it does seem like there is some room there between Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un to, continue talking and stuff. And let me also just throw out two other things. One is there is no timetable for any of this. Donald Trump could be politically maneuvering so that this will, he will keep kind of pushing the goalposts and whatnot so that he has something during the re-election to really kind of hammer on about. Now, maybe he gets nothing super concrete, but he gets enough that he can say, I brought peace to the Korean Peninsula, I did all, and without really doing anything to get elected, and then in a second term, just do nothing. The other thing is, that's the thing, that whole dangling the carrot thing of, listen, if you reselect me, I will be the guy who finishes this and actually accomplishes something that none of my predecessors could. But at the same time, at what cost, right? How much has to be given away to Russia, quite honestly? Because let us not forget that in the equation here, between the Chinese, the North Koreans, and Russia, there's a lot of business that could get done without all these sanctions in place. There's a lot of business getting done even with the sanctions in place, again, frankly. But there is a lot more that can get done. And while we're watching Russia consolidate its oil, its entire oil, what shall we call them? I don't know. What would be the resources? Let's just call them resources. It's oil resources. They've made a deal with Venezuela now. They've made a deal with a couple of other non-Arab OPEC nations. They have deals in place with the Chinese that the Western media has no piece of knowing about, and certainly you're not going to hear about on an RT. They are consolidating and strengthening their position, and believe it or not, North Korea would be a useful little chip in that whole thing, and the regime would benefit from it a great deal. This is the three-dimensional chess
that is not being observed by the administration. They think they can play this game with them because they have been a convenient boogeyman to pull out of the closet every once in a while as a grand distraction. Look, they hacked Sony Pictures. Look, they... Come on already. Okay, please. The thing is that this is the way this is going, and this is a greater game that's being played that has nothing to do with how much he trusts the guy and everything else. Oh, well, don't worry. I'm sure that I can trust him, so you don't need to see the paperwork. I love that. You don't need to see the paperwork. I trust him, and I think he's so talented. And it almost sounds like, you know, an old man trying to pick up a 30-year-old waitress at a diner. Okay, you know, you're so talented, and you're so bright, and you're so yeah, okay. When meanwhile that's got nothing to do with nothing. Now, could it be that he is really looking forward to expanding the Trump brand into North Korea? Why not? You know, after all, Ivanka and Jared, who were sacrificing for the nation, you know, working in the White House, and how dare you say anything disparaging about her, especially to call her feckless. Anyway, all of that having happened, they apparently, according to reports today, made $85 million last year. But, hey, pay no attention to that, because we have the dog and the pony. Now decide which one is the dog and which one is the pony. Okay, I'm sorry, Pierce. Go ahead.
Well, I agree with you there. I think that this is the problem. I think that we've become so jaded and cynical as a society that, you know, we automatically, you know, just sort of like think the worst or the best of any situation. You know, and this is a great example. Democrats are attacking Trump right now. Now, let's not kid ourselves. If this was the other way around, if Hillary Clinton had gone to North Korea, Democrats would be praising her, even if the, you know, if the language of these declarations was exactly the same. Democrats would be praising her, Republicans would be attacking her. That's just an obvious. Now, at the same time, I find it interesting that we have some people on the true left, you know, or in the alternative media, that are praising Donald Trump right now, you know, without really kind of looking at the full optics of this, which is something that they usually spend their time doing, you know, with other events. And also, you know, yes, it would be wonderful if this happens, and maybe it will. But what is, you know, what's the ultimate price? Is peace in the Korean Peninsula worth, you know, is it worth it if Donald Trump destroys Yemen, Central America, Africa, you know, certainly like West Africa right now is teetering, Central Africa, Sudan, you know, I mean, there's other parts of Asia that are suffering. I mean, you know, it's sort of like at what cost? Like, what is ultimate, you know, because again, to say, oh, okay, fine, you know, all these horrible things, but here's the one good thing. This is something that left-wing journalists and alt-media journalists, you know, would constantly attack the mainstream for doing, saying that, okay, fine, maybe the Iran deal is good, but Obama did so much more horrible stuff that, you know, like it sort of outweighs it. So again, it's like everyone is so quick to, you know, just kind of get their win in there. And one other comment I'll say on this, and then maybe we'll kind of expand this out a bit, is that we also have the precedent set by the Iran deal by Donald Trump. And I think that's twofold. One is that he does not respect deals at all, because he reneged on that. And the Iranians have been warning the North Koreans about that. You know, don't get yourself into anything with this guy, because who knows? Now, on the other side of that, we also have the precedent being set that a sitting U.S. president can renege on a deal from another sitting U.S. president. So let's say that Trump comes up with he comes up with his North Korea deal, and it's so wonderful and blah, 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 just like Obama's Iran deal. And if a Democrat gets into office, who's to say that they won't reverse that? And they will point to, well, Donald Trump did it. And I think that this is a national security matter. I can negotiate a better deal. They can use all the same languages as him. And I think there's enough political capital that they could get away with that, because the precedent has been set. So I think we should kind of keep all of this in mind, and also keep in mind the fact that, you know, ultimately, this should really be about peace in the Korean Peninsula between the North and the South, with maybe even the possibility of reunification at some point. You know, that should be the ultimate goal, not America getting the North to give up their nukes. that really is, to me, is almost like second banana to the real issue, which is peace between the North and the South. And also, I'll just say that, a lot of people have been saying how wonderful, because, again, Trump has to throw in something to the veterans because he's all about the veterans, draft dodging, baby. But I love the veterans. They're the best, Gold Star, this, that. A lot of people are making hay about the fact that, the Pentagon is going to be allowed back into North Korea to look for POWs and, remains of people that were missing in action. Yes, that is fine, but do not kid yourself either. That is basically, the Pentagon is now sending spies into North Korea. They are not just there to look for remains. They are there to spy on the North Koreans. And if you don't think that's the case, then you really are living with your head in the sand. That is that is part of the purpose there. Those guys will, even if they weren't officially told that you're going to be spying, they will be debriefed the second they return to South Korea by a CIA agent in the embassy. So, keep that in mind as well, that there's, that while that's obviously Trump throwing a bone saying I'm all about the veterans, that's also a very easy way to insert military intelligence or CIA, just straight CIA, into North Korea, with the goal of looking for remains and looking for POWs. I mean, I'm not quite sure what that language is about. I don't know that there are many POWs, if any, still being held, like in an official capacity. I mean, maybe they're in secret prisons, in which case I doubt that they would ever be released. But, that aside, I suppose they're talking about remains and bringing them back. But, again,
it would have
use
to be
your mind.
It would have to be a recovery operation at this point. There would be nobody alive that would have survived in captivity in North Korea this long. Okay, I mean, take a look at what happens. Come on, the guy we got back in a medical coma was only there for a little while. You think somebody's going to sit there for 60 years and be in good shape?
No, right.
Come on, look. That is throwing a bone to typical Americana. That is once again playing on the deeply seated Vietnam guilt syndrome, which, ask Vietnam how that went as far as the introduction of individuals to go look for POWs. A guy named Ross Perot was actually involved in that. Look it up if you don't believe me. And I got to tell you, they utilized lots of interesting spies, and Vietnam wasn't even a player at that point in time. I mean, they have rebuilt. They are a functional nation once again, but quite honestly, they were not even remotely the type of threat that North Korea could be and is. So therefore, they are absolutely going to send people in there that are specifically there to be assets for, reconnaissance. There's no other way to do this. As a matter of fact, it would be absolutely irresponsible not to. Quite honestly. So,
and these people are going to have diplomatic immunity. They're going to be like official CIA spies, like working out of an embassy. They will have cover. They will, be able to do whatever. I mean, not whatever, but within reason. But yeah, I mean, again, don't kid yourself. This is about sending official spies into North Korea.
Well, unless these MAGA morons get their way and somehow change the Constitution and the laws of this land, I mean, eventually Trump will be gone. But I got to tell you, I found a worrying concept pushed forward to me by a listener, which was that perhaps we are looking at the upcoming grooming of, say, Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr., to take over in a dynastic sense, because after all, see, now we made these remarkable steps forward during our time as deal makers. You got to stick with a winner, and maybe there'll be a new dynastic setup, which is why, say, Ivanka is positioned there in the White House, so she could eventually be vice president, and who knows, maybe even be the first woman president. Now, this was given to me as a theory by a listener, which at first I scoffed at, and then I thought about it a little more. Why not? Quite honestly, what are you going to tell me, that the kids don't know what they're doing because they inherited their business from daddy? Well, what do we got now? Add the spray tan and take away even the ability to go ahead and shoot animals with a large gun. We got it now. And still got the Trump brand on him. Still got the Trump brand on her, even though she's, Ivanka Kushner or whatever at this point. I don't know if it's Trump, Kushner, Trump. I don't know what it is. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Either way, lots of more, properties to be added to them for China and all that good stuff. Because what did they get? A few more trademarks recently?
Yeah.
After the ZTE deal. Doesn't matter how we undermine national security, because anybody that says that, they're part of the deep state, right? So, he's battling the deep state while basically giving away the store regarding concessions, legitimization of individuals across the planet, and absolutely undermining the integrity of any agreement made by a U.S. president. Because here is the worry, by the way, which a lot of people had in various conflicts with this country. Often they say, look, you're only there for a few years. If you're there for 4 years, you're there for 8. You've been there for 3, you're only going to be there for 5. What happens after? And the answer usually was that for all intents and purposes, if you maintain, and we have, an agreement in place, you will not see a reversal on it by the next administration. That's out the window, and that factor has not been taken into account by a lot of the people who are celebrating and a lot of the people who are trying to demonize this for a lot of different reasons. They are forgetting that there was a continuity between U.S. leaders, regardless of their different alleged stances and the fact that, listen, I'm not an idiot. I know it's all a one-party system, so don't give me this Democrat versus Republican crap. But the bottom line is, even seemingly philosophically different leaders would not undermine each other's agreements without some sort of cause. Trump turned around and basically tossed the Iran nuclear deal, stating that, well, they're lying. Well, where's your proof of their lying? I don't have any, but I know they're lying.
Well, the Israelis gave it to me.
Well, yeah, that too. Don't forget that. But, I mean, the Israelis, that's another fascinating aspect of this, by the way, that what is it that the Israelis gain out of all these interesting negotiations? When it comes to North Korea, a lot of people think that's unrelated, and on some level it is. But, again, you got to think three-dimensional chess. It's not all about the pieces you can reach right now. It's about 3 or 4 moves from now. And the reality of what's going to happen in Asia, considering that, we're not part of that Trans-Pacific Partnership thing either. That's another deal that wasn't made, despite the fact that we got promises that another deal would be made. Again, you can object to it all you want, but now we're not even a factor. We walk out of G7 not signing. Now we're not a factor. We walk out of a lot of things without signing a significant agreement of any type, basically marginalizing any sort of influence that the United States has all across the planet. And who should be celebrating at this point except for, well, that guy who's a good guy over there in Russia who happens to be running things? What can I say, man? At some point, this starts to look like the political version of what happened financially to the Soviet Union, where the complete undermining of the system, by people giving away the store, is exactly what happened. See Boris Yeltsin. Okay? Sorry, but that's what we're looking at this point, Pierce. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. What do you think?
No, I'm feeling, and I hate to be so pessimistic about the at least with the North Korea stuff, but I am just seeing it as, I don't really believe him at all, and I think that the people that are so excited, I hate saying it, I think they're clouded by the fact that they believe that there is a true peace, a road to peace out there. And they are foolishly taking Donald Trump at his word. They are also fooling themselves into thinking that Donald Trump is the supreme leader of the United States. The Pentagon is going to have a say in this. Congress is going to have a say in this. The CIA is certainly going to have a say in this, and they're going to do whatever they want to do, no matter what deal is signed. There's a lot of factors. John Bolt, all of these national security neocons that have, weaseled their way into the Trump administration, they're all going to have something to say about this. And ultimately, this is a man who enjoys the creation of a PR story to take away from a bad PR story. So this is, I believe, more so what we're seeing with his pronouncements on North Korea. And I think that we would be naive to think that this is going to really, I don't know, form into something that is going to be really life-changing. I just don't really, I don't know. I don't see that happening. I hate to say that because, like I said, I'm glad that they're talking, that we're, at least for the moment, not talking about destroying them and bombing them, but I think we also need to be realistic about all of this. As the fire truck blares by my window.
I was just going to say, I love that every time I'm on your show or you're on my show, we get some police sirens or fire trucks. What kind of neighborhood do you live in, brother? Because you're...
Well, it's just my block is just the street that I live on is like the major thoroughfare for the whole area. So every fire and police car has to go down.
I know, I'm just messing with you, man. I just find it funny that I always hear it. Sometimes it's vaguely in the background and sometimes it blares. And it's great. I love it. It's so authentically New York. Because when you live in New York, you barely even notice that stuff. Go ahead. So.
Oh yeah, no, and it's so hot. You got to keep the window open. But Chuck, we're coming up towards the end of the first hour, and I think we've probably exhausted the North Korea stuff. And I wanted to get into there's some stuff going on in Yemen, stuff going on in terms of Jeff Sessions, really just insane new statements and laws, basically, about with immigration and gang violence. But I did also just want to maybe end this hour on one of the most interesting thing I discovered about from the Singapore summit, and I don't know if you knew this, Chuck, but that Greta Van Susteren actually works for Voice of America. Did you know this?
Yeah, that's one of her new jobs.
I know, and I saw her, because she was on MSNBC for a while. Then she kind of disappeared. And I always loved Greta. You gotta love Greta. And then I saw her interviewing some official, maybe it was even Trump, in Singapore, and she had the microphone up, and it was VOA. And yeah, apparently she's a contributor to Voice of America. So what a wacky person. And just amazing that Voice of America would even hire Greta Van Susteren is just kind of beyond me. But I don't know. I guess power to her.
No, listen, power to her, sure, but you know what? At the same time, I got to say that sometimes I feel like the Mandela effect is real, and I've been left in the wrong universe because, quite honestly, I would never imagine that this sentence that I'm about to utter would come out of my mouth, any years, I don't know, in the past decade, 15 years previous to our conversation today, Pierce. But at the summit between the United States president and the North Korean supreme leader, I never imagined that the most likable person, in my opinion, would be Dennis Rodman. And there is a statement and a half. So, we live in a reality which is beginning to shift, my friend. And I don't know. I'm not comfortable here. Are you?
No, I know. I mean, like you said, I sometimes feel as if I'm in, a victim to the Mandela effect, leaving aside the fact that it's obviously Berenstein Bears. But also, when you've got Greta Van Susteren, this is, for anyone, I'm sure everybody knows, but, Greta Van Susteren is a Scientologist. She's a very bizarre background in history. Of course, she was, became famous from the OJ trial. But yeah, to just see her trajectory, and then to suddenly she's in Singapore for Voice of America, and Dennis Rodman is flying to Singapore, on behalf of Potcoin, which is the cryptocurrency that is for the cannabis industry. Is just it is like we woke up and we're in an alternate universe.
Yeah, and Greta, for all of her strangeness and her different job titles over the past few years, nothing is stranger than her appearance. I mean, her and Al Sharpton are tied for the odd morphology they've gone through in the past decade, in my estimation. But maybe we'll get into that in the next hour.
Yes, so we will be speaking with Chuck Ochelli from Ochelli.com in the second hour, so please stay tuned.
Narcotic.
Freedom.
Oh, yes, I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
Simply Clean Foods is dedicated to providing the best quality food you can buy next to fresh from a farmer's market. Our stringent quality controls and absolute zero GMOs plus testing for heavy metals makes us unique in the storable foods market. Our line of fruits, vegetables, and meats are suitable for everyday use, and you won't have to worry about throwing away valuable groceries ever again. Take out the amount you need and reseal the package for use within the next 6 months. Simply Clean Foods' primary focus is to bring clean food to people all around the world and change the way we look at freeze-dried food in our daily cooking. Go to simplycleanfoods.net. That's www.simplycleanfoods.net today.
American Survival Wholesale is a proud sponsor of the American Freedom Radio. And when you purchase quality products from AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, you help support this program. Our quality non-GMO foods do not contain MSG, high fructose corn syrup, or heavy metals. At American Survival Wholesale, you can choose from over 8,000 quality products, including self-defense weapons, bug-out bags, and long-term storable food at wholesale prices. We also have custom food packs available, including gluten-free, dairy-free, and vegetarian packs. If we don't have it, you don't need it. American Survival Wholesale is a veteran-owned and operated company which also supports our veterans in need, and we are very active in disaster relief. If you would like to become a distributor, please email us at bugoutamerica@usa.com or call 818-720-0759. We offer free consultations to answer all your questions. Do it today while things are calm. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com.
I don't like words that hide the truth. I don't like words that conceal reality. I don't like euphemisms. And American English is loaded with euphemisms because Americans have a lot of trouble dealing with reality. Americans have trouble facing the truth. So they invent a kind of a soft language to protect themselves from it. I'll give you an example of that. When I was a little kid, if I got sick, they wanted me to go to the hospital and see the doctor. Now they want me to go to a health maintenance organization. Smug, greedy, well-fed white people have invented a language to conceal their sins. It's as simple as that. The CIA doesn't kill anybody anymore. They neutralize people. The government doesn't lie. It engages in disinformation. Israeli murderers are called commandos. Arab commandos are called terrorists. Contra killers are called freedom fighters. Well, if crime fighters fight crime and firefighters fight fire, what do freedom fighters fight? They never mention that part of it to us, do they? Never mention that part of it.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow. Friendships to flourish with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom, and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs, and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Good control is good. 5, rocket copy. 3, 2, 1, engage.
Prepare your mind to experience American Freedom Radio. Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything: geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Porkins Policy Radio. I am your host, Pierce Redmond. If you are joining us here in the second hour, we are speaking with our good friend Chuck Ochelli of the host of the Ochelli Effect. You can find all of Chuck's work at Ochelli.com. He's also on Patreon, and I highly recommend people go there and support Chuck, which you can do for as little as $1 a month. Of course, you can also support me at Patreon for as little as $1 a month, and I will have the bonus episode will hopefully actually this time for real not be out the last day of June, but a little bit earlier than that. And I also just wanted to update the listeners very quickly that Christoph Gehrman and I will be recording a new episode of Porkins Great Game sometime this month. That's basically official. We just have to kind of tweak the dates and figure it all out. But Christoph and I are we are still good friends. We still email each other, and we of course will continue the show. I know that a lot of people out there get a little afraid that Christoph and I are. I don't know. We've broken up over whatever, I don't know, podcast beef or something like that. But that is not true at all. And Christoph and I are very excited to release a new episode, and we might even be able to release like a few more over the summer. I think we'll both have a little bit more free time, so hopefully we'll be able to release more episodes. And ideally, of course, we would want to get back to a regular monthly schedule, but we'll have to see. And also, there will be some new episodes of the Open Minds On Air podcast, which I do with the Open Minds Foundation. I've got 2 episodes basically almost ready to go. I just got to finish editing, but that will be up as well. So please do check those out. I know a lot of people have been enjoying that. And do, kind of spread the word on that, because we're trying to get that podcast up off the ground as well. But, excuse me, you should never clear your throat on the radio, but there you go. I am back with, it's just like a gross thing to do. I am back with my good friend Chuck Ochelli, and we're going to get into some other topics, I think of a geopolitical nature, but I just wanted to just a quick little thing, because we were talking about Greta Van Susteren there at the end of the hour, and I said that she's a very interesting person, with Scientology, the OJ trial, Voice of America. I also just wanted to point out to listeners who may not know, Greta Van Susteren was a lawyer, was actually a pretty high profile lawyer, and one of her clients, I think this was like probably back in the 80s or early 90s maybe, was Henry Vinson, who was the DC Madam who ran a male escort service, who was connected with all sorts of nefarious characters, including Craig Spence, the CIA asset, or CIA. Yeah, I guess he was an asset. He was also a crack user, and Greta Van Susteren, according to Henry Vinson, kind of sold him out to the government. So there's a very interesting story there. Maybe I'll link up to some articles from Henry Vinson's blog where he talks about his relationship with Greta Van Susteren. But anyway, Chuck, I wanted to get to some other topics, and maybe I'll throw it to you first. I mean, I have a few things that I wanted to get into, but I know that you had some stories as well. So why don't we just start with what's on your mind right now?
Well, I wanted to throw a couple of curveballs at you that I discovered because I scour news feeds of various types, and J.P. Satili's on your show often. I love the fact that he does the rundown, which is a great news aggregator, but believe it, I don't just stop there. And I happen to pick up on a couple of things of interest, I think. And, for many years we've heard in the alternative media especially the certain drum rolls about the invasion of our rights and our privileges and all that good stuff, through the various mechanisms of the big bad wolf government. And I wanted to give a couple of counterpoints to that and step outside of geopolitics really quickly with two news stories that are very short, if you don't mind, Pierce. Would that be all right?
Yeah, of course. Go right ahead, Chuck.
Okay, well, one of those, throbbing drum beats has always been, you'll get yourself fined or arrested for collecting rainwater, and they actually fine children for opening up lemonade stands, which is true, but is an overused tagline by a lot of people who don't really have anything original to say. So I found this story interesting, and it's in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. It's at agc.com. If you guys want to go find it for yourselves. Country Time Lemonade, this is the headline. Country Time Lemonade to help kids cited for illegal drink stands. Okay, wrap your mind around that. No, I'm not kidding. This is in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and I'm just going to read from it really quickly. Not very long. The rite of passage for many kids, neighborhood lemonade stands are getting some children in legal troubles. Last week, police were called in Denver when boys opened up shop to raise money for charity, KMGH reported. Police halted sales because the boys didn't have what they said was the necessary permit. The city said that no permit was needed, but it was too late. KMGH reported the boys' story went nationwide and caught the attention of a company known for its lemonade, Country Time. Now Country Time is launching a team of experts to help kids who find themselves in hot water dealing with permit issues. If a child is fined, Country Time's legal aid, that's in quotes, legal-aid, will reimburse the fine or permit up to $300. There's more on the story there at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, but I find that an interesting note. And something to sort of get yourself out of the malaise of current geopolitics. Now, I'll give you another one, and it's from my old hometown paper up in Jersey, and this one is just comical to me, although there is some serious stuff in it, but definitely something that caught my attention just as I was scouring the headlines, if you don't mind me going for two, Pierce.
No, please.
Okay. Now, I am reading this from the Asbury Park Press, which anybody from the New York, New Jersey area knows is a Central Jersey paper, which has been a staple of the area. Of course, it started in Asbury Park, as the name suggests, but is now today part of the USA Today family of newspapers and all that. So, intellectually, not very strong any longer, but it's still one of those things that'll catch my attention every now and then. Now, here's the headline. Berkeley Wunder Wiener hot dog stand crushed in crash. Owner seriously injured. Now, Wunder Wiener, the reason why I said it is because it's spelled W-U-N-D-E-R and then Wiener, W-I-E-N-E-R, hot dog stand, okay? So, Berkeley Wunder Wiener hot dog stand crushed in crash. Owner seriously injured. Berkeley, this is the headline again, and these were published in the past couple of days, both these articles, by the way. And again, this is at app.com. Berkeley, a popular hot dog stand on Route 9. The Wunder Wiener was demolished and the owner inside injured when an SUV slammed into the roadside business. Owner Gerald LaCrosse, 74, was taken by helicopter to Jersey Shore University Medical Center in Neptune. The driver of the SUV was taken by ambulance to Community Medical Center in Toms River, police said. LaCrosse, who has had his stand in the same location for at least 34 years, is also a member of the Beechwood Borough Council. The crash closed Route 9 in both directions between Washington Avenue in Beechwood and Gladney Avenue in Berkeley. Police said they don't know how long it would take Verizon to fix the downed wires caused by the crash. This is literally how the story is written, by the way. Anyway, Ryan Gonzalez said he was driving his son to school on Route 9 when he saw the vehicle, a white Toyota Sequoia, cross the highway and slam into a pole and the stand. It was raining, and the car came out of nowhere, he told the Asbury Park Press. He said he called 911 immediately, and although he first had to drop off his son, he came back to speak with police. He just demolished the stand, he said. It was definitely upsetting. It was very surreal. It was people running across the road, just so much chaos. Then there's a picture of the owner in the article. Anyway, Frank Kymack, an employee at Ace's Auto Repair, which is next door to the stand, said he saw the accident and immediately rushed over to help. He said the SUV was traveling southbound on Route 9 and couldn't stop when the car in front of it was stopped to turn left into Dunkin' Donuts, which is across the street from the stand. The SUV skidded across the street, hitting the utility pole and the stand, he said. Traffic didn't stop, though. Okay, there's more to the story and pictures of the demolished stand and the stand before it was demolished and all that at app.com. But Wunder Wiener was attacked by a wayward car in Jersey, and it is a headline news story. So between that and Country Time Lemonade helping out kids who are getting fined if they submit a form and actually upload a copy of the permit, which they had to buy, can also get reimbursed up to $300. So these are just two of the ancillary sort of news stories that I come across when I'm going through my news feeds that don't involve Donald Trump. Okay, Pierce, I'm done.
Well, I was just going to say on the Country Time thing, I too have, had to listen almost ad nauseum about people talking about the rainwater being fined for that, although it is crazy that that's even possible. But the lemonade stand thing, that was news even to me, and that really is like police have nothing better to do than to harass children for selling lemonade, especially in the example in that article. I mean, it was for charity. Shouldn't you be, I don't know, stopping murders and rapists and child molesters and all sorts of other criminals, or maybe helping the community? I mean, that is pretty insane.
Well, in the new normal, you got to stop people from using Canadian lemons. After all, Justin
right.
Trudeau is the new enemy of the American people, and we must respect the agricultural trade process and tariffs here, Pierce. So let's be serious about what's necessary. We can't let the globalists do this to us. I'm sorry.
No, I know. Yeah, no, man, that really is. Yeah. Well, Chuck, that's sort of an interesting segue into one of the things I wanted to touch on. Talking about like police going after children's lemonade stands. On the domestic front, we seem to become more draconian and more kind of insane in a lot of ways. And I don't want to kind of do the whole fear-mongering, the globalists, FEMA camps, that kind of Alex Jones nonsense. But
I was just going to say that was a pretty good Alex Jones.
I've been working on it, right? No, it's not. It's not bad. Yeah. But I think that there is some truth to that, and I just saw today when I was sort of checking out news stuff and maybe looking at some topics that we were going to talk about. But Jeff Sessions has signed into law. He's basically reversed, or the DOJ has reversed a ruling that allowed for people who were from Central America or other places, but that's the main sort of focus. Basically, people that were fleeing because of domestic violence or gang violence, who are fleeing asylum in America, that is no longer an acceptable reason for asking for asylum. Now, the case in particular that this is referencing, it was a woman from Honduras who, was savagely beaten by her husband. She was pregnant at one point. He beat her so badly that the baby was born premature with bruises on it. He said that, he reportedly told her there's no point in going to the police because all the cops and judges beat their wives. When she did go to the police, they advised her to basically leave him. She did do that. Her husband then tracked her down and raped and beat her. And then she eventually made the trip to America, where she gained asylum, saying, I can't go back because of the violence, against me. And that sort of created this court ruling that would allow for people to apply for asylum because of domestic violence and gang violence, which we see in places like El Salvador, one of Donald Trump's favorite places, and that has now been struck down. So this wonderful nation that's making peace in the Korean Peninsula is now going to be sending thousands upon thousands of people back, or they can no longer use that as a legitimate reason to escape. And while some people might say the domestic violence, isn't enough, although if you listen to this woman's story, she certainly deserved asylum, the gang violence, or basically the language also stipulates that violence committed by non-state actors, so gangs, paramilitary groups, terrorist groups, whatever you want to, there's a lot of non-state actors out there causing violence. That's kind of
fascinating right there, because, we're instituting policy in this country for immigration based on the fear of MS-13, according to, the Trump. You got to stop the bad hombres. They're MS-13 people that are murdering Americans all the time. Of course, pay no attention to the fact that Morris Salvatrucha would not exist without American interference in El Salvador. But anyway, the point is that we have to stop those bad hombres, Pierce. Don't you understand? So we can make state policy for it, but you can't make state policy to protect people. You got to make state policy to prevent people from coming here. Don't you know?
Yeah.
I mean, really, this is where we're at. This is where we're at. The idea that, and I'm familiar with that story, and there's many others, by the way, where where that woman was told to leave by the cops and sort of started to escape and then got tracked down. There's many other stories that end a lot worse than that, even, quite honestly. And
certainly,
the reality is, how are we not able to absorb this, I wonder, especially considering that our birth rate is at what it's at. We don't have the proper level of replacement for people in this country to even maintain the population. Oh, wait a minute, maybe that's the point. I build the wall, right? Build the wall. I really hope that Canada builds a wall very, very soon, and a lot of people start going and banging their heads up against it until they knock some sense into themselves, because this is really past ridiculous, man. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it just, on a moral level, I think we should find this reprehensible, that we would force people to, basically that you have to leave. I mean, because, and this ruling, while I think this was sort of, specific, or it was sort of more focused on, Central America, Mexico, Central America, maybe even parts of South America, but we're talking about those sort of regions. I mean, this can now be applied to virtually anything. There's a lot of non-state actors committing violence all over the world, and people oftentimes try to seek asylum here in the U.S. I mean, it's just...
well, let me ask you a strange question in that regard, then. I mean, according to the logic being put forth, does that mean that someone who is the victim of one of these alleged organizations, which is not a state actor, like, I don't know, one of the other favorites like ISIS, they don't actually have a flag of a nation that they're under precisely, do they, that is legitimate, so therefore they're not state actors. Al-Shabaab are not state actors, as far as I can tell. Maybe I missed something. I missed a memo somewhere. There are various paramilitary organizations that are not considered to be acting under the auspices of a legitimate state or even a semi-legitimate state. So does that mean that they're all disqualified now?
I don't know. I don't know the specifics of it, but I mean, I assume. But my point was that I think the door is now open for that. Again, this was, this is being framed in, that it is really affecting a lot of Central American women. But again, that's just one small fraction of a much larger issue facing men, women, children, anybody around the world. that come here. But I believe that this could. My understanding is basically that domestic violence, including rape, beatings, whatever, and also, gang violence are no longer a legitimate reason to apply for asylum in the United States. And as a result of that, thousands of people could be deported back to El Salvador or Honduras or wherever, where, they could be killed. And, this is, I know there's been quite a bit of debate over this in various, high-profile cases where, a woman was ran away from her husband and came to America and had to go through a whole legal rigmarole because they had entered illegally, but, there was a real threat. And generally speaking, that's been upheld. Now, I think the Obama-era law, or it sort of wrote that this is a legitimate reason, that you cannot, you can't send someone back if they can prove that, they will be beaten or worse if they return. But now, it just seems cruel, really. Now, of course, I'm sure that, Breitbart and others are saying, oh, well, they're making it up, or they're just using it so that the Marxists can come here and, take over America, and that it's, these are the same people that are convinced that, MS-13 is exploiting all of these asylum laws so that they can come into America. And again, I'm sure there's some truth to that. I'm sure there are some criminals, that come here illegally and do horrible things. That's just, duh. But to put so many people in, I don't know, it just seems cruel and just, nasty. And again, it just sort of reminds me of this, we've this image abroad right now, Trump is this wonderful person and stuff. Again, if he's willing to do this to people who are really, under threat of violence or death, do we really trust him to, make peace deals, to actually get us stuff? So I don't know. And it just seems like it's that at home domestically we're becoming more like the countries that we're trying to make peace with. And I'm not just talking about North Korea in this example.
Isn't that fascinating, where we're becoming more like those other places? You can't trust the previous regime's agreements because the new guy comes in. You can't necessarily trust that, there's going to be de-escalation of hostilities on the planet because, fact check, we've actually had more drone strikes and things going on in this first year of the Trump presidency than we did in the first year of the Obama presidency. Maybe I missed something. As a matter of fact, I think it's actually worse than that, but check it out for yourself. You have a whole bunch of wars going on that nobody's talking about, including the situation in Yemen, as well as, reinstitution of certain ugly things that you and I talked about last week on my show regarding Central and South America. You have a world community that probably does not know what to make of our policy altogether. But don't worry, because after all, something was floated out in the media that Trump was considering maybe decriminalizing marijuana, because that's the word that they still use, even though Jeff Sessions and the Justice Department shows no signs of doing any such thing. All of that going on, why should we talk about this? Well, maybe we would want to take a look at the fact that while all this is going on and being debated, of course, net neutrality took and bit the dust. So now when you combine that with the recent upgrades to the EU's agreement with the interwebs, what does that mean for those of us that are actually going to be out there trying to continue to bring you information and be on the internet? What's going to actually happen? Are you going to get throttled to death by your local provider? Probably. And is it legal? Sure. And was it happening before? Yes, but at least the government would sue these providers on occasion and put a stop to it once in a while. What are we looking at anymore? What is actually being accomplished? It seems to me as though there is just, again, lots of dog and pony show, and you're just trying to figure out which one you're supposed to take for a walk and which one you're supposed to ride. That's the way it is. And meanwhile, A lot of people are disaffected to a point and will gain a level of exhaustion at some point where they're going to buy a certain message. And you got to say that the people that seem to be in charge at the moment are absolutely attuned to presenting that message in the way that they wish to control the overall opinion. There is a level of information exhaustion which is beginning to set in. And the reason why I brought up those two completely dissimilar articles to talking about any of this is because haven't you, Pierce, I'm going to ask you this question personally, but also the listener in your own head, you can answer this. Haven't you found yourself seemingly exhausted every time you try and follow the particulars of any one of these news stories? Because there is a deluge of ridiculousness and who's snubbing who on Twitter. And, oh, by the way, the guy who used to work for the CIA has now come out and said this. And meanwhile, commentators are saying that. And you can't trust this particular news outlet because they're just there for entertainment. There's a court case that says so, by the way, when it comes to Fox News. And, you know, there's all sorts of stuff going on, but nobody's really paying attention to what's right in front of them, which is this divisive divide that is across the entire population. You find individuals who cannot get along with one another, and they blame it on just about anything that they can pick out of thin air because everybody's retreating to their own personal echo chambers. Why are we still wrestling with these kinds of issues? Why is it still one of these things that we have to contend with constantly? Why is it still valuable for an idiot to think that maybe he can pardon Muhammad Ali to score points? Why is it that, you know, celebrities can get somebody off who was convicted of a drug crime, and meanwhile people that work tirelessly, continuously attempting to get individuals who have been either wrongfully convicted or unnecessarily punitively punished by the pay-for-play justice system, allegedly, that exists at the moment? Why is it that those individuals are not getting the news coverage, but Kim Kardashian can go to the White House and get a grandma out that was dealing coke? Why is this all a reality? Well, because people don't appreciate the reality around them and don't really want to see the ugliness that they can swing a dead cat at and hit right outside of their own doors. I don't know, man. It is a strange place in which we find ourselves. And again, I'm wondering about the divergence between, you know, was it actually Berenstein or Berenstein? I got to tell you, I sort of remember that it was Berenstain, but then again, I'm one of those freaks, so I'm obviously messing with you. But, you know, adding F's to products and telling me all about how there was, you know, a TV show that existed. Oh, I'm sorry, a movie that existed, starring who was it again? Oh, right, Sinbad, the actor.
Sinbad, yeah.
Sinbad. No, Shaquille O'Neal did a movie that was sort of similar, but supposedly Sinbad made a movie that now doesn't exist. So, you know, listen, Pierce, keep your
Shazam and Kazam.
Straight. Yes, you must. Because it's real, and there's whistleblowers that are going to tell you about it. And if you don't like them, go over to QAnon, because they'll tell you about the various ways in which children are being shipped on boxcars in cages. Oh, wait a minute. That's what our ICE department's doing. My mistake. But please tune into QAnon, because they will give you a whole bunch of hyperbole that has nothing to do with reality, that was amped up on 4chan or 8chan or one of the other chans. Not sure, but anything outside of Jackie Chan will do. These guys are there to provide the things that you want to hear inside of that echo chamber in your head. So by all means, continue to seek out your own normalcy bias, because it's comfortable there. Now, if you think that I wasn't saying that with my tongue firmly planted in my cheek, you are wrong, and again, not listening, which is really the problem for a lot of people. They don't listen to the totality of what's being said. They don't understand the consequences of what's being said, and again, seem to happen to embrace their own prejudices above any new information. So it's a very difficult world, And it's only going to get easier the faster we can convince people to be more honest and not out there simply trying to sell their male enhancement and telling you about the globalists being defeated, and also not trying to tell you how much they wish to track down and seek the impeachment of a leader whose commercials they're running on ad nauseum on their air. You know, that's the thing, the contradiction and the retaliation of said contradiction. You get off the hamster wheel, and then maybe you get to catch your breath. That's the way it works. Okay, I'm sorry, man. I know I just went like into a totally weird direction, but I got to tell you, it gets exhausting trying to break down the ugliness of things when all you really want to do is see the beauty in the world. And man, I would love to just rant in between a couple of hard rock records every now and then and be a radio DJ somewhere, because that would be the most useful and enjoyable thing I could do. But instead, I feel compelled to continuously speak about the unreal reality TV show that has now become this particular alleged nation and seemingly the rest of the world. But then again, I'm just a conspiracy theorist, so don't listen to me.
No, Chuck, I completely agree with what you were saying there, and particularly the sentiment you're allaying about the, you know, this sort of, like you said, this deluge of just horrible stuff, and you know, there is something I think to be said about that people's desire to only hear the good, or to be in that echo chamber, you know, and it doesn't have to be the QAnon morons or any of those MAGA red pill poppin' idiots, but the people that were genuinely excited about I should have looked up her name, of course I don't have it, but the coke dealing granny. Now, should she have been out? Yes. Was it too long of a sentence? Yes. Is Donald Trump going to actually implement drug reform and release all people on for possession of cocaine? No. Is he going to do anything towards changing the prison system? Absolutely not. You know, and there's something to be said that a woman who admitted to being part of a large-scale cocaine trafficking conspiracy is going to be released from prison, but a woman who is systematically beaten and raped by, you know, gang members or her husband seeking asylum in America is going to be deported back to her abuser. Now, there's something that's not right in that scenario when you're genuinely happy. You know, I don't see Kim talking about this with Donald Trump. And you know, there seems to be this desire amongst a lot of, you know, it's like they need to hear that one good thing. So maybe it's that story, or maybe it's the North Korea thing, in order to almost like drown out all of the other horrific stuff that's going on. You know, like in Yemen right now. Again, Donald Trump, the great peacemaker. Okay. He's basically doing nothing to avert a genocide at this point now in Yemen.
No,
there are 8 million.
Yeah, I read the story, you know, just yesterday about these rockets being launched, right? You know, Saudi Arabia being involved in all this. Of course, they're our client nation over there. Before we move into Yemen, just real quick, though, I just want to tag on to one thing you just said, and then I promise I'll shut up, because I know I just ranted for like freaking 10 minutes there. The point is that, you know, you want compassionate release. How about Sirhan, who's probably guilty of attempted murder on several counts, has been in prison for almost 60 years? How about that? You want to get into somebody who's been wrongly convicted, and hey, you want a black guy as a bonus there, Agent Orange? How about Abraham Bolden, who was framed by the Secret Service and shut up and then forcefully drugged and imprisoned, okay, after serving as the first black Secret Service agent in U.S. history and attempting to blow the whistle on the Secret Service over the Kennedy assassination? How about you grant a pardon to him, okay, if you want to do something useful? But anyway, I don't think that's the goal. How about compassionate releases for a whole bunch of people all across the country, names you're never going to hear, who are sitting in prisons having their lives and families destroyed because they had possession of the wrong plant? How about that? No, I don't think so. But meanwhile, let's go to the dirty war in Yemen, and let's talk about the fact that there are people there dying continuously. And what was it? The Houthis launched, allegedly, some missiles recently. Is that what I saw, Pierce?
Yeah, so there's this port. I think I'm going to mispronounce it, but it's Al Hudaydah. It's like the only remaining port that is operational to move in food and medicine and all sorts of aid. It is it's right on the ocean. It's I believe it's almost like directly west from Sana'a, from the capital, and so it's right across from Eritrea or Somalia. I can't remember, one of those countries, right on the Red Sea. It's like the only port left where they can get food, medicine, blankets, all that kind of stuff. And the United Arab Emirates, Trump's buddies, are about to bomb this port. The UN and the Red Cross have already pulled out. British aid agencies have been told by the UK government to leave immediately. This is on top of the US sort of warning the UAE not to do this, but that doesn't really seem to have, that seems to have just been talk. I mean, if they really wanted them to not do it, they would tell them point blank, you cannot do this, and then they wouldn't. But under the, with the, wonderful, glorious peace talks in Singapore, I think the UAE is using that as a distraction in order to bomb a port in Yemen, which will be absolutely catastrophic. Now, they are using these bogus reports, or I'm sure there's some truth to them, that Houthis, who have controlled this port city, are using this to ferry in missiles and weapons. Now, okay, maybe that's true. Let's say it is true. Is it still, again, why does the United Arab Emirates care what the Houthis are doing? Okay? I mean, it's not their country. Now, are the Houthis firing missiles at Saudi Arabia? Sure. Do they do any damage? Absolutely not. Is it worth destroying this port in order to stop the Houthis? No. First off, Al-Qaeda and ISIS will fill that vacuum immediately, because suddenly, they'll be able to get, aid and money and weapons still, even without this port. Somehow, those groups will be able to get stuff. And in, like a lot of places, they will exercise their financial and military power and gain control of areas, provide shelter, provide some normalcy, and basically keep a lot of populations hostage. Now, I wonder if Saudi Arabia has anything to say about that. No, of course not. It's about the Houthis and the evil Iranians. There are 8 million people in Yemen that are already starving to death, and the UN has already come forward and said that 10 million will be at risk of starvation. So 18 million people could die in Yemen just from starvation, okay? We're not even counting, the physical violence, things like cholera. Do you know how many children are dying of diarrhea in Yemen? I mean, it's insane. So, we're talking about millions of people that are going to be killed in a completely, this is all preventable. This could be stopped. And the U.S. could make it happen, with the one phone call. The U.S. could stop Saudi Arabia and the UAE. They could implement some kind of a ceasefire, and they could get aid into these countries. The UN and the Red Cross, the Red Crescent could all, they could give out the aid, but no, that's not going to happen. So, again, I mean, we're talking about a humanitarian crisis on a scale that is really, I think, unfathomable. People cannot comprehend the violence and genocide and destruction that's going on in Yemen. So, and I think that should just be an indicator for people out there talking about the peace president, he's so wonderful, the great deal maker. I mean, is this part of his, is this the art of the deal? Destroying Yemen? And again, this, he's so compassionate. He freed this woman. Like you said, Chuck, he's not freeing anyone else. And he's ordering the deaths of millions of people, 10 million people easily in Yemen.
Meanwhile, we still do not really know what actually happened in Somalia. In case you missed that blip, there were some servicemen killed recently. We do have action on the African continent, as I stated several times on my show and was called out as somebody who was making things up. You don't get people killed if there's not some action going on. Point blank. Niger, okay. Also, let's not forget that. Remember that whole controversy? Oh, we forgot about it because there was a phone call, right? And a tweet. So we forgot about it. We forget about all this stuff, and you almost find yourself asking, are we at war with Oceania, or are we at war with Eurasia, or are we Eurasia? The thing is that there are rumors of wars. There are wars going on that are not being spoken of. There is no war. War is peace. And doublethink in and of itself is doublethink. So remember that. And, where are we at? It is really an erupting, strange situation, again, that we find ourselves in, and this is why I ranted a few minutes ago. The ugliness of what's going on over there, it's difficult to sort the propaganda, okay, which we do know is being put out. I mean, the Saudis have their own arm out there. There are various actors in the Arab world who present news, allegedly, that do it with this very, very tight spin on what it is they're deciding to put out. So it's very difficult to find out what's actually happening. My guess is, based on the evidence, we have a greater atrocity being committed in Yemen than we've seen in a very long time. Of course, maybe if we took a look at what actually happened in Iraq over the past 20 years, we might have to, do a bit of a measuring contest here, because we're not really sure, because, hey, nobody's talking about that either, are they? Anyway, all of that.
Well, it's funny, Chuck, is like and Madeleine Albright gets called out on this, rightfully so. Her comment, was 500,000 dead children worth it in Iraq? And she said, oh, yes, of course, even though it accomplished absolutely nothing. I mean, are like 8 million Yemenis worth it to defeat Iran? I mean, because that's really what this is about. This isn't about Yemen, or this is Yemen again is being used once again as the playground for world and regional powers to have a pissing contest,
right?
To see whose thing is bigger. So I mean, that's all this really is. So they're using the pretext of Iran's influence with the Houthis, as tenuous as that may be, as an excuse to butcher easily 8 million, if not 10 million, more than that. I mean, there's so many people at risk. So, yeah, I mean, are we going to turn around and, is Donald Trump going to be asked, was that worth it? Was it worth allowing Saudi Arabia, the UAE? And don't forget, I mean, we're involved in this as well, completely. We're not a passive observer in any of this. First off, we're flying, bombing raids. You mentioned Niger earlier, Chuck. I mean, remember the whole botched raid in Yemen as well? The very beginning of his presidency, where it was maybe we killed some Al-Qaeda guys, maybe we didn't, maybe we lost somebody, maybe it was a big, PR stunt. We're launching airstrikes. We're overseeing this. We allow... we help refuel. We do in-air refueling for Saudi Arabia while they're bombing Yemen. So again, if we really wanted to stop this, we would tell Saudi Arabia, we will no longer refuel your aircrafts when they're bombing the crap out of Yemen. We're not doing that. We're not telling the UAE, if you do this, if you bomb this city, that's it. We're gonna cease relations, or there's going to be hell to pay. I mean, we have the power here. That just brought up an interesting question. I hate to do this to you with only like 15 minutes left, but I have a question for you, Pierce, because I did not take notice of this. I got to admit my ignorance. Much like Melania Trump, did the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia reemerge? Because he hadn't been seen for a bit there. No, that's a good little story we can look up on. I don't know that he's officially emerged, although there have been pictures of him that came out that seem to show that he is alive. Like, I know there was a picture of him, Al-Sisi from Egypt, and the leaders of the UAE and maybe Abu Dhabi, at somewhere. And I believe there's also footage or pictures of him and his father at some sort of official Saudi event for soldiers or something like that. But, but I will say none of this is really helping to dispel the rumors because, of course, why not just have him come out, why not have him do an interview?
Maybe he's a bit tired after his tour there where he was purchasing things and such. I mean, and the reason why I bring this up is to juxtapose it against what you're talking about, which is that still nobody is paying attention to this, and I find it remarkable that a whole lot of atrocities get committed on the planet. We can embrace a regime which is, allegedly creating a whole bunch of atrocities upon its own people. Wait a minute, aren't we supposed to get involved every time that happens, when they're using chemical weapons and things against their own people? Wait a minute, that was only those other Arab guys, right? Okay. But, when somebody's starving their own people, we're supposed to get involved unless we're actually helping them do it, it looks like to me. And that is the interesting point here. Meanwhile, Turkey is still a player in this whole equation as well. And I say again, it's very difficult to sort because we are too busy tracking down who Donald Trump is thinking about pardoning, and why Dennis Rodman is, getting his plane ticket paid for by Potcoin, and so on and so forth. And, I got to give it to Michael Avanti, actually, because he keeps himself in the news cycle despite this, floon ride that we all seem to be on, which, reminds me a lot more of what winds up getting flushed at the end of my day, usually. And it is what it is, I find it remarkable, and it's very difficult to get a lot of information. I mean, I can't confirm nearly anything that I want to report about these stories. It's difficult. You go to things like Middle East Monitor and stuff like that, and it is almost no wonder that people wind up going to the outer reaches of the strange world of the internet to try and find information, because quite honestly, the filler which is being provided by most people that claim to be informative is not even really worthy of filling a pillow. And how much of this stuff are you going to stuff in your head? It's difficult, man, and you're right. These are points that need to be brought up, and why is it that, it shouldn't be a surprise that we live in a place which is represented on the world stage with a lot of cruelty, a lot of military interventionism, a lot of involvement in, seemingly domestic disputes that go on in other countries, civil wars and things like that, that we either stoke or create. But sadly, when it comes down to it, what do we get to hear at this point? Well, it's all about money. And meanwhile, what about the fact that Puerto Rico, what is the death toll? 64, and it's really 4,600. I mean, I guess life is really not all that valuable to certain people any longer. And I know I'm bringing up a diverse group of things here, but that is really the overall theme that I see. And again, maybe it's just my predilection to continuously try to find patterns in things, but that is the only pattern I see, is that on the planet at the moment, life is not a very valuable commodity, and I don't know what is outside of power and press. Prestige, maybe, I guess, would be the way to go with it, but since there are prostitutes pushing prestige, I have no idea how to alliterate that properly for you. So it is what it is, and it's just it's a sad situation to me, and not sad like, just throwing the word sad at the end of your tweet, but I mean really truthfully sad, depressing situation that that we are allegedly watching unfold across the planet. What can we do about this outside of speak our minds and speak to power as often as possible and try and change the trajectory? I'm not here to give you a speech about voting, that's for sure, but something needs to be done, man. And I'm very hopeful that we will see solutions coming up a lot sooner than more disillusion, because we are on a very, very slippery slope all the way down the hill, where we're going to end up in the crevasse of history, and the American empire will fall, and it will be even bloodier than we could have imagined. But then again, a nation which was built on genocide might just as well end that way, I suppose. So it is what it is, man. I don't know. We're almost out of time, right?
Yeah, we're coming up. We've got like 10 minutes left, or no, probably less than that. But no, I know what you mean, Chuck. It is super depressing, and it is sad, and in like in a truly profound way, how basically, I mean, just how human life has become so cheap, and it's so rich coming from, you know, the evangelical right that just seems to love Donald Trump, give him a pass every time. They're always preaching about the sanctity of life, but it's really, I mean, it's nothing. And then, you know, on the flip side, I mean, the way that all sides of the political, cultural spectrum have cheapened life. So, you know, you mentioned Puerto Rico, where the death toll is going to, I mean, it's going to be even larger. Rebuilding is going to be extremely expensive. And, you know, I mean, they may never fully recover from that. And, you know, when that gets brought up, I see this whole, you know, litany of little right-wing trolls on Twitter saying, "Oh, well, why don't you know,
they were
it's
behind
the
on
DNC.
their loan."
Yeah, well, it's all the Democrats' fault because they ruled Puerto Rico. You know, it's like that's fine. Now, I think that sure the Democrats have a lot to answer for, you know, in terms of some of the stuff going on. But leave that aside, okay? People are dying, and certainly the government is covering up what the full scale of damage there. And have a little respect. I saw people weaponizing Anthony Bourdain's suicide, you know, saying that, well, you know, the media constantly, you know, covers up male suicide, so the media is to blame for all of, you know, what are you talking about, okay? Now, does the media not cover male suicide? And yeah, sure, fine. They don't cover suicide in general the way that they should. But, you know, again, however you feel about that, it is, I mean, you know, take a step back, all right? You don't need to use this man's suicide in order to score political points. Then it really is, human life is nothing. It's all about the clicks. You know, it's all about ad revenue on YouTube videos. It's all about getting traffic to your site.
And a week after the 25% increase on the National Suicide Hotline phone calls, okay, and 2 weeks after, and 3 weeks after, and a month after, there are still going to be people suffering and contemplating exactly that action. And the reason is that we're not addressing the cause. Yeah. And it's not about medicating, and it's not even necessarily about mental health. It's about suffering in general, because for some people, it is not an insane decision to take their lives. And that is the reality of the situation. And that's what I tried to say on my show about it. But watching the pandering to it and the tributes and the vomitous sort of defense of all sorts of strange things, and the weird twist put on it by our friends over there at Jonestown, was even the topper on the cake, man. And that's another disgusting thing. Whether it's one life or it's you know, millions of Yemeni lives, they're all of value. And somehow or another, we need to re-educate people about that particular fact, Pierce.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know that this will sound a little preachy and stuff, but I mean, we really need to, you know, find our morality again. You know, and I'm not saying this in like a Christian way or a religious way or whatever. I mean, if you want to interpret it like that, then go ahead, whatever. But, you know, we've like lost all sense of what our morality is. And what is right and truly evil. And until we do, then, yeah, like you said, one person, 8 million, destroying countries, making excuses. I mean, it's really, really awful. And I see that trend is kind of increasing more and more. And we really kind of need to take stock of that. I do have some, hope. I always try to tend to be optimistic when it comes to these things, that this cannot sustain itself. At some point, we will be jostled out of this nightmare. And we are now at the break. I want to thank my good friend Chuck Ochelli for joining me. You can find all of his work at Ochelli.com. Please support him on Patreon as well. Thank you all so much for listening, and I will be talking to you all very soon.
No rules, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, We are American Freedom Radio.
Simply Clean Foods is dedicated to providing the best quality food you can buy next to fresh from a farmer's market. Our stringent quality controls and absolute zero GMOs plus testing for heavy metals makes us unique in the storable foods market. Our line of fruits, vegetables, and meats are suitable for everyday use, and you won't have to worry about throwing away valuable groceries ever again. Take out the amount you need and reseal the package for use within the next 6 months. Simply Clean Foods' primary focus is to bring clean food to people all around the world and change the way we look at freeze-dried food in our daily cooking. Go to simplycleanfoods.net. That's www.simplycleanfoods.net today.
American Survival Wholesale is a proud sponsor of the American Freedom Radio. And when you purchase quality products from AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, you help support this program. Our quality non-GMO foods do not contain MSG, high fructose corn syrup, or heavy metals. At American Survival Wholesale, you can choose from over 8,000 quality products, including self-defense weapons, bug-out bags, and long-term storable food at wholesale prices. We also have custom food packs available, including gluten-free, dairy-free, and vegetarian packs. If we don't have it, you don't need it. American Survival Wholesale is a veteran-owned and operated company which also supports our veterans in need, and we are very active in disaster relief. If you would like to become a distributor, please email us at bugoutamerica@usa.com or call 818-720-0759. We offer free consultations to answer all your questions. Do it today while things are calm. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com.
Assassination. You know what's interesting about assassination? Well, not only does it change those popularity polls in a big hurry, but it's also interesting to notice who it is we assassinate. Do you ever notice who it is? Stop to think of who it is we kill. It's always people who've told us to live together in harmony and try to love one another. Jesus, Gandhi, Lincoln, John Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, John Lennon. They all said, try to live together peacefully. Bam! Right in the head. Apparently we're not ready for that. Yeah, that's difficult behavior for us. We're too busy sitting around trying to think up ways to kill each other. Here's one we came up with. It's efficient, too. Genocide, Killing large numbers of people simply because they don't look like you, they don't talk like you, and they don't have the same kind of hats you do. You ever notice that anytime you see two groups of people who really hate each other, chances are good they're wearing different kind of hats. Keep an eye on that. It might be important.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow. friendships to flourish with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom, and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs, and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Control is good. 5, rocket copy. 3, 2, 1. Engage.
Prepare your mind to experience American Freedom Radio.